In this session, we'll have two talks. One will be a continuation of what we discussed in the last workshop. And then folks from Samhita will give an introduction to what happens in the next session, where we'll have NGOs who will present problems. Okay, I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnan. This is a project that got many of us inspired at the last workshop, which we held at IISc. And the goal is to think about problem solving in a civic complaint sense, right? So we all have had problems where you see potholes on the road, you see things that don't work in your city, where you live. And it's often very hard to know who to contact, how to complain, and once you make a complaint, how to follow back and understand whether it got solved or not, right? And so the Ventor solution that they proposed last year was a technology solution to help you make complaints easily, and then also help you sort of understand and look at all the complaints for a city manager or for us. And I'm very excited to hear updates from Dr. Ganesh.
Thanks for hosting this workshop, and I'm glad to see several of you back here. So this is joint work with Sunita Sarawagi, faculty at IIT Bombay, and then a couple of students, graduates, and project staff. This is AI-based complaint management. The motivation, there are several venting platforms that are extremely operational, flooded with complaints. I Change My City, Speak Up. Mumbai, the greater Mumbai basically has a complete complaint management system of its own. Inspired by all that, IIT Bombay has also started a complaint management system. And there are many others. I've highlighted the first three who actually are active clients. And what are the kind of complaints? There are images, there is text. Text can be short. Text could have multiple languages and also mixed code. Locations, though we have a separate field for locations, many of these services do provide separate fields for locations. People tend to get all of that mixed up in the actual description. And you can see the descriptions with images are often not completely consistent with the image itself. So these are basically concerns about cows eating garbage, but the text is something different, right? And these are all from Bangalore, incidentally. What's the scale of these services? I Change My City with 8 million users across several cities. And the range of problems is also different across these different organizations. There are also issues such as fake or spam posts, which are very specific to certain organizations and services. MCGM, on the other hand, doesn't have a very nice interface. It does provide an interface for typing in text, but it has an excellent complaint routing system. So each offers its strengths and has limitations. Speak Up, again based out of Bangalore, is India's first one-stop feedback platform, not necessarily restricted to civic problems, but also banking-related problems, Aadhaar problems. So they have several verticals, and the feedbacks are all analyzed manually, as in most other services. Sometimes the feedbacks tend to be extremely emotional, so sentiment analysis becomes quite important. And there are several junk posts as well. And just to give you an idea, this is a kind of contrast. Speak Up complaints. This is about high-speed internet, and this, I think, about some telephone provider. On the other hand, ICMC is largely about civic complaints. So obviously, we can't provide a solution that works across all of them. What we've been evolving is a platform which all of these could use, and in fact, tune their models. So here's how things were some time back. There are users, there are these venting platforms, and there are civic bodies to whom these platforms are routed. Interestingly, ICMC routes several of its complaints related to Mumbai to MCGM. So where does Ventor come in? So Ventor also could stand for Vent Analyzer. So there are existing venting platforms, and what we do is use AI so that citizens could connect to each other through a common shared label space, so that we realize two complaints are exactly about the same issue, possibly in the same location as well. and also providing tools for vending platform to control the AI. There are basically two issues, A and B. I'm going to use those numbers. So the A is connecting citizens to others with the same complaint, and B are actually tools that we want to that we have been providing these clients, ICMC, Speak Up, and so on, so that they could build their own models. How? Interactive label and incremental labeling, explainable labeling, and also the capability of designing simple rules, which we more generally call labeling functions, and the whole problem of label sets evolving, because nothing is static and fossilized for any of these organizations. So the role that MSR has been playing is helping us identify and connect to social partners. This has been very handy. We would have never known of Speak Up and the issues they had. Also helping create the bridge for a dialogue is also a challenge. It has taken several rounds of iterations for us to get some steady state involvement with I Change My City. And recently we also came to know that MSR has a SysSieve, text feedback classification system. We studied it to some extent. It's for a more restricted vertical, but we are very happy to collaborate and tie up. We would be very happy for MSR SysSieve to own up all that we have done. So our contribution so far has been building AI tools and platforms which are being used. And we also want to connect to the industrial experience at MSR to actually scale it up. We've been scaling out to some extent, but scaling up is the challenge. So what are the AI challenges here? Complaints are multimodal, there's text plus image, and as I said, there may be inconsistency between what's typed and what's there in the image. Noisy mixed language complaints, koi garbage nahi uthata, and evolving set of issues. And just to give you an idea, when we use some deep networks, anything that is pulled out off the shelf doesn't really work in the Indian context. So for example, for dogs, stray, roaming dogs, etc. are what we learn. Whereas if you use pre-trained embeddings, you have zebra related to a dog, whereas for us, zebra would be more related to a crossing. Likewise for garbage. Yeah, these are more examples. And there are a lot of subtasks that are shared across complaints. For example, this is where we generalize our solutions across the different users and clients. The methodology that can help them extract problems and separate them out from entities about which the problem is stated. And we embed all this in a continuous space. Interestingly, we are also able to embed images in the same continuous space as the text. And sometimes complaints are only images. That's another challenge. So, and that's where this co-embedding helps. So here are examples. I think examples speak louder than words. So we able to figure out that these images are all about garbage, but they are in a specific sense of garbage, that they're all related to cows eating up this the plastic trash, which is concerns that responsible citizens have shared on the platform. This is another interesting case, Kooda Pada Hai. Now, you can see that the text actually varies significantly across the posts. This has been here for months. People have started dumping more garbage. Whereas near Garg store, Sarai People Thala, which has no mention of the word garbage at all. Right? So all these have been mapped to the garbage category. Okay, so what do we have currently? A vendor service which is exposed, which is accessible at this site. Any of these vending platforms comes to us, says please create an account for us. We can do that right away. And we specifically within the IIT, we are also experimenting with app-based interfaces, because most of the other vending platforms have their own apps. But what we realize is these apps also need to be empowered with AI. The tags should be interactively suggested. Can the user correct the grammar of the complaint as he types? Now all that we really can't experiment with some of these operational vending platforms. So we decided to do that in-house as well. I'm going to run you through a very quick video, because that will give you everything that is required to understand. This is what happens. Any of these organizations can log in with the account that is provided. Here's a category prediction model. We've kept all the interaction through simple CSV files because that's what they find it most effective. We've gone through iterations to get to here. So in the past, we would ask them to use our APIs, but that didn't work out given the varied nature of these implementations. And here what you see is the spreadsheet that they have uploaded. You can see the complaint, and there are fields that are very specific to that organization. And they have their complaint types based on which we learn a complaint classifier. And now what our system does is once it trains the model, for any new complaint, it will give you a prediction, the complaint type, with confidence of that class. So you can see there are multiple classes, a drop-down list. The venting platform, the admin there could actually correct the label, and this corrected label will reflect in the model that gets updated after a round of training. So something very simplistic that they're able to use. All this, as I said, is making use of deep learning. Images and text both are handled, though we have shown only the text part in this demo for the sake of simplicity. So you can see, and there is also color coding that is used to kind of improve the user experience. Okay. And the user can actually upload, and then the whole thing gets reflected in the next round of classification. So we have likewise an Insti app. Now the interesting thing about Insti app is even as the user types the complaint, he's able to see the possible labels, and the user can actually select or unselect one of the predicted labels based on what he thinks is appropriate. So there's a lot of semantics lying buried in a label, right? What do you mean by garbage is very different across people. You're quite surprised. So an electric pole that has fallen down because of rains becomes garbage for some people, right? So consistency is the key issue here. So this is how the Insti app looks like. As I said, along with the text, there's also tags that come up so that we are able to come up with a consensus of the tags as quickly as possible without a long turnaround time. The interface that we showed, there's a turnaround time that gets incurred because the service is disconnected from the actual platform. So we're trying to do the tight integration here. Okay, so what are the issues? So I said there are two things what we have already deployed, and these are problems we're working on for individual organizations. One of the issues is evolving complaint classification and ontology. The label set keeps changing. So how can we use AI to let the venting platforms evolve their own classifiers and evolve their own class labels as well? So here you can see entities like roads, garbage, animals, street lights, and suddenly drones become new set of entities. And that's a reality, at least in the larger cities. And then rallies, again in larger cities. So you need to associate new complaint categories like noisy and pickers asking money and so on. In fact, pickers asking money is a problem, it's a new problem associated with an old entity that's garbage. So obviously you can't have the same label set catered for all time, for all organizations. So how do they evolve? So we have some solutions here, and also recency matters. So what I meant by garbage at the beginning of creation, or rather when I started my platform, is probably different from what I mean right now. So how do we give recency more importance? Again, we use labeled memory networks, which incorporate a mixture of simple nearest neighbor classification and the long-term learning across the legacy data set. The other thing is fine-grained extraction of problems about an entity. So what? Yeah.
So these different platforms, when they give you data, do you continue to update your own models, collecting from all of them?
Right.
What are the data rights and how do they react to that?
So we provide a checkbox. We ask the organization to let us know if we could use the data they're going to ingest. Right. So we need to work with you on how to create stricter access controls, but for the time being, they're all happy with this arrangement. They trust us. So only if they click that checkbox, we use it to update our model. Otherwise, it's theirs. Thanks. I would really like to know the right ways to go about it. The other thing is, why was a particular label assigned to a particular complaint? And that's all about fine-grained entity extraction, highlighting sections in the complaint that led to a particular label. So garbage not collected versus garbage blocking vehicular traffic on a road are very different complaints. Right? And they get routed to different categories, though there's a common entity called garbage. How do you associate the text in blue or yellow, leading to different classifiers? As I can say, pickers asking money for garbage. So here's the larger context in which the entity garbage is being talked about. At least in the Insti app, what we are providing right now is highlighting the section that is responsible for a particular label showing up, so that the user has clarity. Again, our goal is to arrive at a consensus as soon as possible. And then the other thing we realized, especially with SpeakUp, so SpeakUp were also happy writing their own small rules for classification at their end. Because again, the time required for a model to actually learn from your training data could be large. So can we use labeling functions, soft keyword-based labelers? And it's often very easy to associate the contextual keywords with the entity that should drive the classification. However, we realize that the rules in themselves might be very limited. When I say garbage not collected, I also probably mean that garbage collection is being ignored, or there have been gaps in garbage collection. So how do you expand the scope of a rule to a continuous space, right? So we've also, we kept research away from this far distance, right? But we do realize research is important, and in fact, we are quite excited about some work that has actually come out from this work. How do you create continuous labeling functions? The human gives discrete labeling functions. The machine, which is good at recall, kind of makes the labeling function or treats it as a continuous one. And this can have implications in improving recall, the machine's continuous labeling space, whereas the user is very good at precision. And yeah, there's an ever-evolving problem list. Learning from multi-line license plates for multiple vehicles in an area. This came from ICMC, I Changed My City. Sentiment analysis, this is what SpeakUp wanted. Identifying mood or tone of the complaints using NLP. Some of these complaints were suicidal, suicide notes, almost. And how do you prioritize the complaints based on urgency? Some of them are also interested in correcting the sentence grammar. Okay, going forward, what we would really like to do is more seriously work with CGNet Swara. We've been in talks with CGNet Swara for some time, but I think now we've kind of stabilized our platform. We work reasonably well for Indian languages and also mixed code. We would like to see what we can do with MSR SysC. And yeah, that's it for Ventor. So this is about skilling in rural India. And this began with our interaction with MSR a year back through the project Karya, which was about creating digital jobs for rural India. So the other part is we have a very strong collaboration between Department of Computer Science at IIT Bombay, and there's a Center for Technology Alternatives for Rural Areas, Sitara. So the team here is actually a mixture. Apurva, who's here, one of the first graduates. Apurva? Yeah, she's one of the first graduates from the center. And there are software developers and there are AI guys. There are lots of students who are interested in this work as well. So it started with this project Karya in 2017 August. Again, things are clipped there at the end. And we had, through this interaction, around 10 students who typed 4,500 words. They generated work worth 36,000 rupees, which was good. We didn't want, one philosophy we try to follow is not to end interactions with the end of projects. So we try to keep the interaction alive beyond Karya. We in fact built a tool. So the team you see there are the guys who actually did the digital work, whom we had identified, and we didn't want them to be let down. So we actually developed a tool which will help them do interactive OCR, because we got several OCR assignments where you have scanned documents and you need to get them into digital format. But obviously no automatic system is 100% perfect. How do you do OCR post-editing? But what we realized is there was absolutely no platform for accumulating jobs, identifying the skill levels of people, their interest levels, their time availability, doing this matching was a major issue. That's when we went to the second part. We said, well, all that is fine. We still have the tool. We are very happy to work with Karya. We also have our tool, and we then talks about integrating the two. But we said, how do you do this need assessment and solution matching? And that's when we realized that Microsoft also has, specifically MSR, has a Karya. Along with Karya, it has a Sangam, Lynda, a part of LinkedIn for skill development. And all these came to our notice. So we are very interested in seeing how to tighten this collaboration at this point of time. But more specifically, let's understand this need assessment and interest matching. So most of the solutions that exist are pushed down, top down. So you push a problem definition and then you expect that people upgrade their skills to match up to solve the problems. However, we realize that there is lack of skilling and there is more seriously a lack of interest assessment of the people. And our field trips, and in fact, we're quite amazed to see the amount of work that already exists, not only across the globe, but especially in India, to very nicely categorize people's interests. So how do we boost people's self-confidence by reinforcing their skill, their interests? And also we need to create this strong connect between industry, that is the forward linkage part, which is concerned with placement, and the backward linkage, their interests. Okay, so we started with lots of field trips, village youth interactions, self-help group member interactions. Especially we took up one specific task, which is of tailoring, how to upgrade the skill levels of tailoring. And we were quite aghast to see that in the rural sector, there's a lot of talent, but there's really no standardization. So if there was a big industry in the area we worked in, they wanted close to 10,000 uniforms stitched over a period of 1 month, and then Maharashtra put a ban on plastic bags. There was a high demand for cloth bags, but it was so difficult to enforce standardization. That's when we realized skill development and need assessment need to be brought together very closely. And this also led us to interaction with regional college students and NSDC skilling center students. Interestingly, we realized that national and international standards can all be leveraged. So the idea was to interact locally and scale up nationally. So the local interaction, we have put in the numbers here. They may appear to be small, but that was absolutely critical for us to understand the qualitative insights. However, as you see in the next part here, we've also leveraged existing national work. For example, National Career Service, Government of India. It has registered a large number of job seekers, 42 million. 2015 National Classification of Occupations. The number of listed occupations are close to 3,000, which is again large. And then the Government of India also refers to personality tests, which have been pretty much standardized, and some of them are also part of IBM Watson. For if you're informed, have tried it. I think MBTI is part of IBM Watson, and so on. So at this point, I'll run you through a demo of the entire system. So I'll request Apurva to come.
So basically, we have thought of Lok Udyog in 4 parts. First is the aspiration finder, because we found that in rural areas, we are targeting rural youth here. So in rural areas, people are not aware of what they can aspire for. So there is a serious lack of aspirations. So that is one platform which we are developing. It is called the Aspiration Finder, where we lead the user through a series of steps, starting from the personality test first, because these rural youth, they do not know what kind of personality they have. So we will be having first a personality test, followed by leading them to different career options, which they will select from a series of metrics. And this is based on national and international codes. Like if you see here, the second step is knowing your career aspirations. I'll just move ahead. Yeah. So through a very simple questionnaire using graphical format, we will be asking the user to answer the questions and let him know his career, his personality type. And then we will be leading him to a set of selections which he will base on his interests. So this entire thing is based on the National Classification of Occupations. And as you can see, there is this 4-digit code which appears, and these are national as well as international codes. So basically the person will be able to find out where he can fit in. What kind of occupation will he be interested in further? Because what happens is these youth, they do not have any knowledge of what kinds of occupations their skills can be translated into. For example, a person might be very physically very fit, but he might know how he can leverage this skill of his. So he could very well be a very good police officer. So linking the person's skills with the career options, and also considering a parameter of his interest. Because if there is no interest in the job that you are doing, you will not get any satisfaction out of it. So we are just concentrating on the Japanese concept of ikigai, which is exploring your purpose for being. So when we spoke about this concept to the youth, they were very much interested in it. And then similar to the first choice, we will also be giving him 10 choices more, 9 other choices, in all 10 career options which we feel might be suitable for him. But again, just having the interest is not sufficient. There should also be an aptitude for going for that particular occupation. So we will be having some aptitude tests. So this mapping will be done for what kind of occupations, what kind of aptitudes you will require. So, yeah. Yeah. So this is the aptitude test, and then it will lead him to the final career options with a percentage of matching. And then the user will also be led to the respective skilling courses based on where his aptitudes are lacking. So I'll just move ahead now. This is a job portal which we are planning to make. I'll just mention 2 important facts about the job portal. One thing is that till now, these rural youth, they do not know what is there out in the industry and what is standard. So we will be exposing them to the National Classification of Occupation, which has developed a lot of qualification packs. There are sector skill councils under the government of India who have developed a lot of qualification packs. So these are something which we will be exposing the youth to. That is point number 1. Point number 2 is that we also found that regional rural colleges do not have a streamlined platform for placements. So in our job portal, we are going to include one module for educational institutions where they can create their own profile and link with the industry. And then there is one last part, which I will just quickly move to, which is the success stories module. We find that in the rural areas, youth lack motivation. And if they hear good inspirational examples from their nearby areas, they get inspired more. If that person can do something, why can't I do? So we will be covering such kind of inspirational stories. The first story which you see, it is of the principal of that regional college.
But just to conclude, all the 4 parts, the components that Apurva talked about, Aspiration Finder, Job Portal, Skilling Portal and Success Stories, all of them actually require AI for matching, right from matching to interactively suggesting as well. So this is the role of AI: data collection, prediction, prescription, control trials. So control trials is what we plan to do starting 1 month from now, once we actually launch the platform. One of the key aspects here is how do you even do automatic resume building based on the placement agencies or the needs of the industries? How do you capture the intent of the industries who actually consume the resume building? These are challenges we need to overcome in tuning the AI models. And we would also like to more seriously collaborate with the MSR Sangam project at this point of time. Karya we're already in talks with. Sangam, for me Sangam actually also includes Linda. This is the the skill development platform, and like to see how that can map to what the rural aspirations are. We have a very detailed report on what strengths the rural youth actually see in manual teaching personal teaching vis-a-vis ICT for education. And it's actually a mixture, a blend of the two that's going to work. Neither of them will work in isolation. Thank you.